All right, let's kind of go over a quick review of what you remember about manna and quail, because this kind of, we missed out on that part on Exodus 16. We kind of went right through it, but there's a valuable lesson in there that God wants to teach us about manna. Okay? All right, what do we know about manna? Anybody want to venture to guess? I have a bunch of points written down here, but I want to hear it from you.
It's a type of bread.
It's a type of bread, okay?
It came from heaven like rain.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
And it tasted like wafers made with honey.
Right, yeah. Wafers made with honey. Have you ever had I had graham wafers. Have you ever had graham wafers, those brown wafers? And I thought, I wonder if it says wafer on it, right? So I thought I'd have a wafer and I'd spread some honey on it. I don't think that's manna. It can't be manna. And then I looked at the package, it's got sodium in it and all this other stuff. Definitely not manna. So, not all wafers are wafers like manna. Okay. Anything else?
We don't have to keep it for the next day.
That's right. You couldn't keep it. What happened? What happened?
They
to
won't.
it?
Like worms.
The
What was
word
that
that you
nasty
don't know.
word?
Maggots.
Maggots. Yeah, get that one around your tongue. Maggots. They're nasty things. They're flies. They're larvae of the flies. Yeah. Yuck. Stuff that you find in your garbage. All right.
But once a week you can stay for 2 days, right?
Yeah, on Saturday. Yeah.
Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, the Sabbath. The Sabbath. Yeah, the 6th day and the 7th. That would preserve it. Yeah. Okay.
Refrigerator went out.
Yeah, what happened when the refrigerator went off? Like when it was cool in the morning, and the sun melted it, right? As soon as probably, I would think probably by about 7:30 or 8 o'clock in the morning, the sun in the desert there would be brutally hot. Okay. Oh yes, I wanted to show you before I go going any further. I wanted to show you what a desert might look like. Okay. This is a snow desert. And there's a book there. Can you get that book on Africa? There's a card in it with a big picture. I took this picture when I was flying in Antarctica. So this is an Antarctica desert, but it gives you the idea of how barren it is. Look, there isn't a tree, there isn't a blade of grass out there. It's just snow and rock. Now I found this other picture which helps you to see what it might have looked like. It's not the actual photo of what the children of Israel might have encountered, but this is also a very barren place, except for it's got a few scrubby trees and stuff. But in terms of growing food here, forget it. You have to have a lot of water, and you can see on the top of the mountains there, it's cold. There's snow on top of it, right? So anyway, this might be what it's like. When we get into Exodus 17, we hear about Moses throwing a tree into the water at Meribah. And so there must have been stuff like this. Okay? Yeah.
Snow caps.
Yeah, these are snow caps here. So if you want to pass it around and have a look at it, that's fine. There's other books, there's other pictures in there. In case you get bored, you can look at pictures. But that's in Africa, which is, well, Egypt's in Africa. Saudi Arabia's not, but it's pretty darn close. Yeah. Okay, do you remember how the manna was how it was supposed to be distributed? We touched on a little bit. You could only have it only lasted 1 day, otherwise it would get the maggots in it. But God had some very specific rules why He wanted this. And there's 2 points here that we want to bring out. Why it was important that the manna was collected and why it was stored in a certain way. Anybody want to venture to guess? Anybody want to think about and how much they got? Okay, you want me to tell you? You want me to tell you?
You only gather for enough for 1 day.
Right. And do you remember the measurement that we talked about? It starts with an O and has a, an omer, yeah. Sounds like some guy's name, doesn't it? Hey, Omer, come here.
One omer.
One omer.
1/10.
And it's two quarts. Canada went to metric a long time ago, but back in the day when we had real measurements, it was 2 quarts was about a jug about that big around. So if you stuffed enough manna in that, you would get 1 omer, half a gallon. Yeah, because there's 4 quarts in a gallon, right? So anyway, that's a measurement system. Probably a lot of you aren't familiar with. You're familiar with the metric system, but I don't know how that converts in liters. You've got a converter in your head to convert quarts into liters. Anyway, it'd be a container about that big around, something like that. So that was enough every person. So now we don't know if that, because this manna was really fluffy stuff, if it took up a lot of space, you know, or it was like porridge, which if it really, you know, didn't take up a lot of space. But the point was that the quantity, you took that. That was what God allowed for you to do. And you did that every day, and you did it every day in the morning. Because by the time the sun came up and got hot, it melted. It was gone. You couldn't collect it the rest of the day. So it was a morning chore, okay? Like you go out and milk your cows, you got to go collect the manna, okay? It's sort of that same idea. You do the milking in the morning when the cows are bursting from the night before. Yeah. So, okay. And then when it came to the 6th day, they were to collect twice as much, right? So, because they wouldn't get any manna the next day because it was a Sabbath. So what was God trying to teach them about this? Was he just being say, forget it, I want a day off, just leave me alone, I'm going on away for the weekend, and I'm not going to supply you with any manna? Was that the point behind the whole thing, or was it?
No, to test them.
He was testing them, yes, on the distribution, but he was trying to set up what?
Obedience.
Sorry?
Obedience.
Obedience, yes, to the Sabbath, right? This was the beginning of learning about the Sabbath, and to make it a day of what? Sabbath means rest. Right. Okay. It was a day of rest, is that he wanted them to do. Okay. So no Sabbath, or no Sabbath, no manna on the Sabbath, and no Sabbath on the manna on the other days. Yeah. Okay. All right. So we've kind of gone through that, and there was another lesson in there. Not only the Sabbath, but the second lesson that God wanted to teach them was that you don't take more. No, some people, you don't get greedy with this. Okay, everybody has the right amount to eat. So everybody is equal. Somebody else doesn't take it and hoard it and then spoil it, so somebody else doesn't have any. And that's kind of a lesson we learn throughout the New Testament as well, that the early church practiced distributing to those that were in need. So that whole principle came all the way from Exodus all the way into the early church, and we don't practice it so much these days because everybody's so independent. But there was more community back then. Everybody had to stick together to survive. Now in our culture, everybody is pretty independent. But you can see how that would work in a community. If everybody had the same amount and had the same amount to work with, then nobody was in need. So that was one of the big principles, that and the Sabbath that God set up in the manna. So it wasn't just food. Here, take it and eat it. These guys had to eat this for 40 years. 40 years. And so you better get used to this idea, you know. And they still, you know, rebelled and they grumbled and they complained about everything. But you think of the nutritional value that must have been in that food. It must have been incredible to keep everybody, women, children, men who were, you know, working, women that were working, that they had enough nourishment to keep their bodies going between the manna and the quail. So the quail was Colonel Sanders' flying chicken that came over, right? Remember the quail? It kind of came down from heaven. Now, what do we know? The quail was a migratory bird. You know what migratory is? Where
Moving
everybody knows
from a
what-
country to another.
Sorry?
Come from one country then to another.
Yeah, people are immigrants,
Right.
are migratory, but our Canada geese are migratory birds. At least they should be anyway. Some of them stay here and mess up our parks. But the geese and the ducks that live here in Canada, they fly, they go down to Florida, down to Texas and Arizona. They go all the way down there where it's warm for our winter. Otherwise, they would just freeze to death up here. Their water, yeah, like us. And the lakes freeze over. They can't get at the food because most of them are aquatic. That's not the sound that duck makes. Aquatic. It's pretty close. But their food source is cut off, so they have to fly south. Well, the quail, and then of course they return back to Canada or United States in the summertime because that's where the food source is, and it's warmer up here. And anyway, God's worked it out that they go back and forth, and then hunters get a chance to knock some out of the air and eat them. So, but the quail, they were migratory birds too. And what I read about them was that they would, on their migration routes, towards the evening, they would be tired from flying, and they'd actually fall out of the air. They were so tired, and so they were easy to pick up. You didn't need a bow and arrow. You didn't need a shotgun. You didn't need anything. Get out. They were just there, and they would get caught in the bushes, and they get caught, and you just pick them up, kill them, and that was your meal for the night. So that was how God pulled that off for 40 years. Every night, these migratory birds, he must have had a special flock that he had, reserved for them somewhere to do it. It's a miracle, right? It's a miracle. So is the manna for 40 years. And lots of people have tried to disprove that this was a natural phenomenon because in Egypt, the quail also visited Egypt. They have actually in their hieroglyphics, the pictures on the wall, they had the quail dropping down. So we know it was migratory, these birds, but how God arranged it, that's but without faith, it is impossible to please him. For he who comes to God must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. Okay, we have this whole group, the backdrop of this verse is the whole children of Israel who have come through to this part. They're grumbling and complaining, and we want to know what happened. What happened to their faith? And so this verse addresses what happens, how we approach God, and what kind of faith we need. So let's talk about faith. Let's talk about who God is, and then let's talk about the rewards. That's the 3 points. I don't have a poem. Usually most preachers have to have 3 points in a poem to make a sermon, but my first point is about faith. Step 1 of faith, and the second point is who God is, and the third point is he rewards us for our faith. Okay, so that's where we're going with this. All right, I put a question up here. Which definition, and these are all from the dictionary, which definition is faith? And you have a choice of 4. Belief or trust. Okay, does everybody understand the words? Okay. Sincerity of intentions. Maybe I'll explain that a bit. You want to do something for someone, and you will pour your heart and your soul into it. I believe that you are the greatest person in all of Toronto, and I'm putting my faith in you. Okay, so that's the kind of idea. The third choice is firm belief in something for which there is no proof. Okay, so you can. It's sort of like a rumor. You can get sucked into a rumor, right? I believe so and so. They stole that money, and so I put my faith in the person who told the rumor. Yeah, they're right, but you have no proof that person stole the money. So you're putting faith in something you have no evidence for, you have no proof, and you don't know if it's true, you don't know if it's false. So you can also put faith in that, okay? Or a belief. Or a belief in the traditional doctrines of a religion. And this is a big one today. Okay? Belief in the traditional doctrines of a religion. So you can have take any world religion that we have that exists in the world, and you can believe in the traditions, the way the priest or the rabbi or whoever conducts the worship service or conducts whatever methods they feel that they are worshiping or the gods or a god, and so you believe in those traditions. You believe. So that's another definition of faith. Okay. So how many people would say D is correct for the definition of faith? D? Okay, all right. How many would say C? Okay, firm belief in something for which there is no proof. Okay. How many say B? I'm so sincere. This is the sincere person. Okay. And what about A? How many would put A? Okay. All right. Okay. Interesting. We've got a few from every camp. All right. Good. All right. Sorry?
She's confused.
All of the above? Yeah. You can be an all of the above person too, I suppose, because there's truth in every one of them, right? They all have an element of truth. But when we approach God, okay, now let's rein it in. When we approach God, which one would it be? What I just want to bring to your attention is you need to know what your faith is, how you approach God. And you need to know where you stand on one of these 4 definitions, because these are basically your accepted definitions of faith. Okay? So it'll give you something to think about, if nothing else. Okay. Now I put at the bottom here the object of our faith. Who or what is it that we put our faith in? Now it's very important that we know the who or what we put our faith in. That's the object. Okay? If the age-old example of the chair, or this stool, for instance, I put faith on by sitting down on this chair, on this stool, that it will hold me up. And it may sound silly that this is the faith. I'm putting faith in this because we think faith is in a spiritual way out there kind of religious tone, but I actually did exercise faith by sitting down on this chair. And I trusted it that it would hold me up, right? And same with you. You sat down in the chair, you never even thought of it, right? You had, oh, there's a seat, and you sat down. Okay? You exercise faith. Okay, so it's very important that we know who or what we believe in. If there are lots of other things in the world that we could believe in, and maybe you could maybe suggest some other things that we could believe. What do people believe in these days?
The news sources, because as we experience it, we don't know if it is real. So if there's somebody say there's a bombing somewhere, we don't know unless we saw it.
Okay.
So we're believing that they're telling the truth.
We're believing they're telling the truth, yeah. But that's not the object. That's the person. Yes, in that sense, yes, I guess you're right. Okay. But there. What about success? People believe in the object of success. Okay? Success, if I have cars, if I have a nice house, those are the big things that even the government's admitting right now. These are the objects of our existence. These are the things that we put our faith into. We believe in them so much, we'll kill ourselves at work to make sure that we get them. Right?